make sure that we are all looking at the same thing. So click this for views option here. Now, what I want to do is model a very simple scene. So I'm going to go to create here, polygon primitive, and I'm going to go to plane. And now what I'm going to do is click on the attribute editor here, or you can hit Control A, and that'll bring up your channel box if it's not like displayed. And so here we have our attribute editor, our channel box, and so you might also have this on the side where you click on attributes and it'll switch between them. So what I want to do in my channel box is just make the XYZ scale a 10, and also under polyplane here I want to make these a 1. So it gets rid of all of those subdivisions. Next thing I want to do is just turn off show and grid. And let's talk a little bit about the interface. I'm assuming at this point you really don't have much experience in Maya. So I'm going to press the spacebar on my keyboard, and that lets me zoom in on my perspective. If I press it again, it takes me out of my perspective view. If you look at the bottom, you have perspective, top, front, and side. Now, I like to teach the interface through actually moving the application around, which can be a little stressful, but stress is good because it's teaching you. If you're not stressed, then you're not like actively engaged in the learning process. If it's boring or easy, again, you're not going to be that engaged. So let's go up here and go to create and then polygon primitive and just create a sphere. What I want to do is I want to move that sphere over here. So off to the side here, you can press W or you can click on the move tool here. And in my top view, I'm just going to move my sphere to the end. And then in my front view here, I'm going to move it above the line like that. Now you can see we have a plane and we have a front, our sphere here. I'm going to hit spacebar here and I'm going to hold Alt and left click, and you can see as I rotate around, what it's doing is it's rotating this camera that's visible through the scene. Now if I want to rotate around just the sphere, I can press the F as in Frank key on the keyboard, and now you can see I'm rotating around this sphere. Now how do I zoom out of this view? Well, I'm just going to roll the wheel back on my mouse, or by holding Alt and clicking the right mouse button, I can just move my mouse forward and back, and that's Alt and holding the right mouse button to zoom in and out. I'm going to hit spacebar again just so we're sort of looking at all these views. I think what I'm going to do is make this quite a bit bigger, so I'm going to change this scale X, Y, and Z to 20 and then hit enter. And then move this guy back in the perspective view a bit more. So that's looking pretty good. Now what I'd like to do for our bouncing ball exercise is I'm going to set keys to start the animation process. Now you might be wondering, well, where is your timeline if you have experience with other animation programs? Well, if I go down here to Maya Classic, you can see it gives me my timeline, and it also shows that view, and it gives me something called an outliner, which allows me to click certain objects in the scene, which is really nice. So with my sphere selected, on frame 1 here, I'm going to press the S as in Sandra or Sophia key, and then on frame 2, so if you hold Alt and you click the right bracket, the right bracket being the less than sign that's next to the question mark, you can go to the right, or you can just click here and click on 2, or if it's easier for you, you can type the number 2 in here. All right. So on frame 2, I'm going to move my ball in the air. Now, notice that it created an automatic key for me. That's one of these red lines. And you might be wondering, well, where did that come from? If you don't see that, you need to turn this auto key option on here. So this is auto keyframe. Now what I'd like to do is copy 1 onto 3. So I could move it down and try to position it. Another way is I can go to my channel box here and I can look where it is on 1, and I can copy these values like this on 3. And I could, go back in here and I could say, you know what, on Y it was 0. I remember that value. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe I remembered incorrectly. Let's see, where was it on 1? It was on 1.054. So if I go to 3, I can paste that. Another really quick pro tip is what I can do is left click on 1 and then clicking the middle mouse or the middle wheel on my mouse, you'll notice it allows me to select frames anywhere without updating the animation in the scene. So if I click back on 3 here and I hit S to set a key, now you'll notice I have it goes up on 1 to 2 and then it goes back to 3, and it has the exact same parameters as 1 if I'm left clicking so I can show you that. All right, now What we're focusing on in this first one is something called posing, and that's where we're posing out the action of our sphere in the scene. Now, I want to specify something and pay homage to a fantastic animator named Shad Bradbury, who actually taught me these sets of techniques that I'm showing you here. So, this is a shout out to Shad. Now, Shad's a Pixar animator, all that great stuff. So hopefully I'm paying him justice by doing this. So this is posing. Posing is we're looking at the actual poses of the scene. Let's talk about timing now. So if I move this frame 3 on my timeline, let's say all the way. Now, the way I did that is I held shift and left click, and I just dragged this key. And if you have a hard time clicking on it because it's too small, you can click on this and just scroll this to the left, and it gives us a little bit more control. So I'm holding shift and left clicking. And if I drag that all the way to 11, notice I'm adjusting where it is on the timeline. So I'm playing with my timing here. So we posed it out. So let's say, let's move this guy out a little bit too so we can make it a little bit easier to grab this too. Move it here, span this out a little bit. Now I can, there we go, shift click. I can move these around and play with the timing. So on one, say I want it here, you could see it shoots up pretty quickly. Now another thing is, the reason it's moving so quickly is we want to set it to 24 or 30 frames per second. So I'm going to go ahead and click the settings option here. So here's my preferences. I usually call it the Dunkin' Donuts guy. And notice on my time slider, if I scroll down, it says playback speed, play every frame. I'm going to do 24 frames times 1, and I'm just going to hit save. Now when I play this back, you'll see it's a lot smoother, right? It's not as quick, and we're actually doing real-time 24 frames per second. So something that you should keep in mind, as we're moving our ball up and down, what you want is even spacing. So you can see here, my frame here is on 11. I'm going to move that to 10. Frame 26 is on 26. I want to move that to 20. So what you want when you're doing your bouncing ball is even spacing between the keys. So I'm going to press play here. You can see now it's evenly spaced out, especially when you're cycling animation. So if I go ahead and make my frame count to 20 and I press play, we get a nice even movement. It's a little boring, but we're going to fix that in a little bit. All right, so let's recap. Posing is the position of where it is in our scene. We've placed our keys, that's the timing. Now let's talk a little bit about spacing. So I'm going to go up here to Windows, Animation Editor, and then open my Graph Editor. And if we look at Translate Y here, you can see that we have a really weird curve of how our ball is going up and down. And while we space this out, the space between here and here has an interesting lower curve. So it eases in like this. With a bouncing ball, we want it to leap hard and then land. So I'm just going to select all of these keys here. Make sure that we have it nice and splined out. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to break these handles. So if I go all the way to the right here, I'm going to extend this out a little bit. I can actually, by having this broken, I can select these keys and then select these handles individually. And then with my middle mouse or by left clicking here, I can move that up. And what we want to do is get some nice clean arches. And so as I move this up, we get a nice pop like that. We want to make sure these are roughly even too. And now when I play this, you can see we get a nice up and down with a hard hit at the bottom. All right, let's stop this. All right, so just want to clarify something. Left and right is time, right? That's where these keys are in our keyframe. So this key is on frame 10. Up and down is value. So you can see here that this is almost at a value of 10. And what we want is we want some good hang time, and then we want it to hit hard. And that's what we're looking at here. All right, I'm going to end this video here, and in the next one we'll take a look at moving it across the surface.